Hey everyone, welcome to the Amazing Team's TacoBytes episodes where Doug and I chat about all things gratitude, HeyTaco, and making work better. Today I'm going to interview Doug about the story behind HeyTaco. It's a question we get so often when talking with customers and prospects, and it's finally time to get an unabridged version of this crazy thing called HeyTaco. Doug, welcome to another season, another episode of
What's going
TacoBytes.
on, Una?
How are you today?
I'm hot and sweaty. 80 degrees out here in Southern Maryland, and we've yet to turn on the air conditioning yet. So I'm a little hot and sweaty today.
Perfect time to ask you to put yourself back 10 years or 9 years ago. Close your eyes, 9 years ago, back in that hot and humid Maryland weather, maybe like backwards 2 months in February.
Mm-hmm.
Where were you 10 years ago and what were you working on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 10 years ago. So 10 years ago, I was working at a company in Northern Virginia called the Motley Fool. And for those of you that don't know who the Motley Fool is or are, they are I guess an investing company that was found in 19 by Tom and David Gardner.
That's
And
amazing.
what's that?
That's amazing. Still
That
going
is
strong
amazing.
too.
Right. Well, yeah, I think I'm not quite sure because the Motley Fool in the 90s and in early 2000 really put their name on the map for their culture. They had a standout culture that a lot of people referred to. In fact, a lot of people wanted to go work for the Motley Fool because of their culture. And I somehow managed to work my way into the Motley Fool in the early 2000s and spent 11 years working there at that wild and crazy Motley company. And so, yeah, where was I at the Motley Fool? I was working on an HR project at the company at the time, and it was really kind of getting inside peek into the HR industry. I was doing a bunch of research on the tools that were available for building culture and driving engagement. And what I saw a lot of things that just didn't seem like they were built for people, everyday people, but more built for HR people. And so this might flow into question two. Now, I don't know what questions you're asking because there's no prep for this. So this is kind of fun for me, but
Exactly.
right. But I was at the Motley Fool working on an HR tool, and that's kind of where I was at. Yeah. That answer your question?
Yes, it did. Did you always work with the HR team when you were at the Motley Fool, or did you kind of move around in your latest gig or your latest project was working with the HR team?
Yeah, I moved around a lot. I worked on a lot of internal tools. And so my role there was UX. I was a user experience designer or developer. I started doing more design over time. Over the 11 years I worked there, I started doing more and more development work as time went on.
When you were doing your research as part of your HR work, do you remember a specific tool or a feature, not necessarily naming names, but that
Mhm.
you looked at the website or tried it and you were like, wow, this is not built for people, and yet people will have to use it? Does anything stand out?
Does anything stand out? The one thing that stands out to me was a tool that we were actually using at the Motley Fool. And I won't name names. However, the company has been acquired by a larger company, so they're not really around anymore. And the reason why I'm referring to this company is because we were using them, and it really inspired my I guess it was kind of the genesis of HeyTaco. It really inspired me to want to build something better. And so this was a tool we were using at the Motley Fool for peer-to-peer recognition. And it was a tool that people used, right? But they used because they were incentivized to use it. And oftentimes they were told to use it. It was a top-down implementation. It was introduced by HR. It was a tool that I just felt like could be better. And so that was really the inspiration behind HeyTaco, was a tool that I was using at the time that just wasn't working.
So you're saying you're using this tool, you're being asked to use this tool, which probably means you did not use it, right? You're you yourself.
I used it in a way that I think a lot of other people used it, and that was just like to satisfy the request, right?
Yeah,
So I was conforming, right?
yeah.
I was conforming to our cultural standards, and that was using this tool. Now, I got to say, like, we didn't always have this type of digital tool at the Motley Fool. We actually thrived just our culture thrived without any kind of digital tools. We had internal tools, and these were get-together celebrations, just a lot of stuff that brought people together. And I think over the course of 20, 30 years of building a company, I think you go through highs and lows. And at this point in time, I think our company was the Motley Fool was kind of maybe trending downwards in terms of, like, let's just say even the employee net promoter score. I think it would probably have been pretty low at that point in time. And so I
Gotcha.
think people in HR were looking for something that would kind of lift that up.
So you're using this tool because you have to, and you said this was the origin of HeyTaco.
Mm-hmm.
Walk me through that, right? You didn't just like wake up one day and HeyTaco was fully built. You had this kind of maybe aha moment, maybe a series of aha moments driving home from work. What happened next?
It took a Hey Taco evolved rapidly within, like, let's say, like a 2-month period. It started off as a feedback tool. I had this vision of this feedback tool that um, was a little bit more, what's the right word? It was more of a tool. And again, this kind of fed right into the Hey Taco story. Is I was trying to build a feedback tool that was more bottom up than top down. So a feedback tool that people wanted to use, and I think it kind of started morphing into peer-to-peer feedback. So peer-to-peer recognition, which is feedback. When you recognize somebody, you're giving them feedback for something they've done, or maybe for who they are. And so it kind of just morphed over the course of 2 months. It went from being like almost like a 360 feedback kind of tool into a peer-to-peer recognition tool.
When you say you wanted to build something that people actually used, what does that mean? What would
Mhm.
make people want to use something?
Yeah, I was really inspired by a lot of game design principles from games. So, leaderboards and levels, and just these kind of tactical things that inspire people to want to continue using your product. And I grew up playing a lot of games, and I looked to gaming as kind of like an inspiration to building a SaaS that people would want to used because it was fun to use, and there was some kind of reward mechanism offered in the application. And so that was kind of the first big feature in Hey Taco was the leaderboards. That was the thing that really drove a lot of engagement, and really excited people. At first, there was a global leaderboard. I quickly learned how that was a terrible idea, because it kind of it opens up the I guess the valve of releasing private and sensitive information to the world, and companies did not like that. So it was kind of impeding the growth. And I had some early recommendations that, hey, we love what you're doing. However, we don't love the public leaderboard. We would like to just have our own leaderboard. So I took a lot of customer feedback in the beginning, and that really helped shape the product.
Once you built it and you have this public leaderboard that now becomes a team leaderboard, how did the product evolve from then on? Were you still working full time at the
Yeah.
Motley Fool? Did you already quit
Yeah.
your job?
No, I was still working full time at the Motley Fool, and I never really intended for Hey Taco to be what it is today. Right? I wake up every morning, just still 9 years later, almost 10 years, just really surprised by number one, the fact that I still get to wake up and work on this every day, and I'm just surprised by how many people have joined us and support this mission. So I'm very grateful for that. But to your question, I was working, and I'd come home, and on weekends and nights, I was working on this, and had a lot of motivation. At that point in time, I had a newborn baby, and she was keeping me up at night, actually keeping everybody up at night. So there was many sleepless nights where I was like, okay, I'm just going to code for a little bit. And I'd say about 3 months in, 2 to 3 months in, over the course of those 2 months, where the product just kind of started evolving, somebody was like, "Hey, you should try charging for Hey Taco," and I was like, "Okay, I don't think anyone would pay for this." And so, um, I felt like I needed to add rewards in order to start asking people for money. And so I quickly added V1 of rewards, because if you look in the marketplace, wherever you see a peer-to-peer recognition tool, you're also going to see rewards. For some reason, the market just assumes that in order to have people recognizing each other with whatever it is, whatever the currency is, that currency has to have some form of value, and that value can be exchanged into physical goods or monetary goods. And so yeah, I felt like I needed to have that. So I quickly built V1 of rewards and put a pricing page up. And the first purchase came in, and I was like, holy shit, people will pay for this. This is incredible. And so I put HeyTaco on Product Hunt and gained a little bit of traction there on producthunt.com. And I started getting all these investor emails. I'm like, okay, this is exciting. Now I got to tell you, like this is that everybody seeks, right? Anybody that is pursuing building a startup or wants to be an entrepreneur. These are the moments when people are reaching out to you that are interested in what you are doing. That's kind of helps you kind of want to keep on going forward. It's very motivational. And that's kind of the story of how it went from $0 to $1.
At which point did you commit to it full time?
Yeah. So I went and I talked to a company up in New York City who was really interested in HeyTaco, and they were talking some deal that they wanted to do. And when I came back from New York City, the Motley Fool expressed interest in wanting to be an investor in HeyTaco. So I went and talked to them, and I was like, okay, this makes sense because the Motley Fool is kind of like my family. I've never raised money. I'm a developer. I'm not I don't have experience raising money. And so it felt very comfortable for me to take money from the company I've been working for over a decade. And so they said, okay, we'll give you a check, and then you can kind of phase yourself out of the Motley Fool. And so over the course of 3 months, I think it was December 2016 was kind of like my end date. So over the course of 3 months from getting the check from the Motley Fool to December, I just started doing less and less Motley Fool work. And since the Motley Fool had an interest in HeyTaco, I just showed up at the office every day. I had my own little office, and was working on HeyTaco full time pretty much.
Before we go into all the design decisions you've made about HeyTaco in our
Mhm.
next Taco Bite episode, can you tell people whether it all started with tacos, actually, or did it start with something else?
It did not start with tacos. Thanks for asking, Una. It actually started with the beer emoji. And believe it or not, the taco emoji was not even available when I started working on Hey Taco. And it was Taco Bell who was lobbying for the taco emoji to be added to the emoji standard group, whoever, the group that kind of builds and puts the standards around emojis. So Slack, was Slack the one? No, I think Slack first adopted the new emoji standards. And then I had to reach out to Microsoft and say, hey, I'd love to build on your platform, but you all do not have the taco emoji. Yeah, this is crazy, right? And so they added it shortly afterwards, and that's when I started building HeyTaco for Microsoft Teams.
One question I forgot to ask you is
Mhm.
why did you build a Slack integration? A lot of people just build a separate standalone application. Why did you decide to embed it with something that already exists?
It's in hindsight, it was kind of like an accidental success. I was deeply excited about the chatbots that were there was like a chatbot movement at that point in time in 2015, 2016. I could just introduce their marketplace, and everybody was building apps. I The one thing that I always saw kind of creating some kind of, I guess it was creating friction for the UX with the tool we were using at the Motley Fool. And that was having to go to a website, sign in just so I can recognize somebody. And I saw that as kind of like a really, it was is a profound uh, barrier to people actually giving people recognition. And so I was like, you know what? It'd be cool if I could just use a chatbot and allow people to recognize their peers in the moment where they're having the conversations. And so it all just kind of connected, and it all made sense to me. And I was like, okay, I need to have the bot in a channel where people are talking, and then they can simply give somebody recognition, and they don't have to go to a separate website, sign in, and that's kind of what led me to down the road of building it Slack first, is kind of what I how I positioned Hey Taco in the beginning.
If you could go back 10 years ago and talk to the person that was working in the Motley Fool at the time, what is one thing you would tell him that you wish you knew at the time?
That's a good question. It probably would have been to focus half of my time on building a team and not trying to do it all alone. The thing with me is I like progress, right? And so I often will find myself up late at night just kind of to move forward. However, uh, you can move forward a lot faster with other people. And so back in 2016, I wasn't even thinking about HeyTaco being a company, let alone hiring and building a team. So um, if I would have, I guess, thought about it differently and less of a passion project and more of like, okay, this is going to be a startup and raising money and I guess follow the norm, right? Because there's kind of like this norm when you raise money, you do certain things. There's these expectations that the investor's going to have in you. I thankfully didn't have those expectations from my investor because they're like, it's Doug, we support Doug, we believe in him. And it actually got to a point where they were like, okay, what are you going to do, Doug? Are you going to raise more money or what? And this kind of led into me buying back my shares from the Motley Fool because I was like, you know what? I don't plan on ever raising money again. HeyTaco is customer funded, and I really saw that as kind of the path forward for the business, being customer funded. I didn't really want to go down the route of raising more money and hiring and building a big team. I wanted to build a company that was comfortable and that I enjoyed working for, and the customers were the shareholders.
And here you are, 9 years later, working on it.
Yeah, still working on it, and it's enjoyable because, as you know, um, we don't have investor pressures. There's nobody expecting anything from you and I except for our customers, and so it's a nice place to be.
Well, and each other. The point of intrinsic motivation versus incentives, right? A lot of
Hmm.
what we do is just driven by what we want to do and the goals we set for ourselves and each other more than anything else, which I
Hmm.
find to be the most meaningful kind of pressure.
Absolutely. When your core values are do the right thing, I feel like for many companies who have investors, you could reach a junction where you have to kind of face your value, say, okay, do I do the right thing for our customers or do I do the right thing for our investors? Right? Thankfully, we always get to do the right thing for our customers and we don't have to worry about satisfying investors. We are the investors.
Very true. Doug, thanks for sharing your Hey Taco story.
You're welcome.